I'm a top 10 IBJJF ranked black belt, and I've competed in over 300 matches over the course of my career. Ever since I was a white belt, besides the break that we all took from COVID, I competed at least once a month from then until now. So it's been almost 8 years of competing once a month, every month, for 8 times 12, 96 months. Competing is a really stressful event to put your body through, even just one time, and it also costs you time to travel to the competition, money to register and travel. So competing is a big investment to gain something from that experience. So what I want to share with you are the things that help me get the most out of competing so that you can make everything that you invested into it worth it. The number one question I get asked, especially because I study my opponents, is should I study my opponents? And my honest answer is that if you're a white or blue belt, the one thing you might need to know about your opponent is if they're really good at takedowns. Like for example, if they were a D1 wrestler or a high level, let's say black belt in judo. The only reason why you need to know this information is just so that you are ready for either a high amplitude throw or you're ready to negate that and pull guard as soon as possible. You don't want to give up the beginning of a match to someone who is 99% of the time going to blast you into the ground. Besides that, I would say when you're first starting to compete, especially if it's at a lower level, then most likely you're just going to do what you're going to do regardless of what sort of information you have about your opponent, right? Like you're a lot of the time still fighting from instinct and less from, let's say, like an intellectual perspective or like whatever you want to call it. And so in that case, it's not really worth your time to study your opponents. I would say around purple, brown, black belt, when you have a lot more tools that you can adapt to what you see on your opponent's film, then it might be worth studying your opponent so you know that maybe they come up from the double pull a certain way, maybe they have a couple tricks up their sleeve that you need to be aware of, maybe they're particularly susceptible to a type of passing that you're used to practicing. In those cases, I feel like studying an opponent has really benefited me because while I'm not changing my game entirely to fit my opponent, I did want to play a game that I am familiar with that had the best chances against them. Another piece of perhaps controversial advice is that I have found a lot of benefit for myself competing in the same rule set over and over. So for example, I have chosen to compete almost exclusively in the IBJJF for now because I feel like that is where I want to build my career, and debating whether a promotion is good or bad is a completely separate video, but that was my choice. And the reason for that is because when you're competing in the same rule set, then you can compare not only the quality of your own decisions, but also the quality of your opponent's decisions, right? So for example, a sweep might work better in a sub-only tournament because your opponent doesn't really have an incentive to fight the sweep, right? Because there's no score. And they might even be incentivized to accept the sweep so that it can go directly into a leg locking position, for example. I'm not able to transfer if that sweep actually worked if I did it in a sub-only tournament, if I went into a points tournament. I have competed in a lot of different super fights. I've competed in the 80cc rule set. I've done sub-only tournaments like Midwest finishers and finishers sub-only. And so I chose IBJJF because I felt like they had the highest frequency of tournaments that I could access pretty much almost any weekend if I really wanted to, and also because the rule set is very consistent. And despite what a lot of other people say, their rules are also really extensive, so I'm able to compare a lot of very specific scenarios to other specific scenarios as long as they're from the same tournament. There's also a lot of match data from the IBJJF, and I feel like that also makes studying and improving easier in a systematic way. Now, in terms of the tournament day, just to get the most out of it, it's really important to have a warm-up routine where you go into your first match as if you are sparring your third match. So if you think about when you're doing an open mat at your gym, for example, is your first round usually your best round? Maybe it's your second round, maybe it's your fourth round. You kind of want to simulate that amount of mental and physical warmness in your mind and body so that you're going into your first match of the day at your best. You really don't want to come out of a match wishing that you had been able to give more. You don't want to think, man, I wonder what that match would have been like if I had given 20% more energy or 20% more power if I had been warmed up more. In terms of having a routine, I don't have anything like you have to kiss the mat or like run in 5 circles or else you're definitely going to lose. But what I do like to do, especially when I have to travel to tournaments, is I bring my own shampoo, conditioner, and soap. And I think that's such like a minor detail, but it's something in the environment that I can control that is familiar to me and teaches my body that we're just doing a regular thing and we don't need to get revved up until, later when we hit the venue. I'm usually traveling using different airlines, different hotels, just because usually they're more budget friendly if you don't have to stick to like one big chain. But for the environmental factors I can control, I might even bring like a little Korean face mask because that's something that I would do at home. So that's my little thing that I like to keep consistent when I travel. You might have something like a Lucky Charm or making a nightly phone call to a significant other, or bring some snacks that you would normally eat, right? Just like small environmental factors that cost very little money, but guide you through a familiar path when you're about to face an unknown opponent. Something else that I like to do is to write down what my mental status was and what sort of mantras I was repeating to myself when I was about to step onto the mat. Because my mental status and level of confidence changes as I'm growing as an athlete, of course, but also with the different types of opponents I was facing, it's really easy to forget what you were thinking at that time because you're just so full of nerves and a lot of different things are happening to your body and in your mind at the same time. And so when I write that down, I'm able to later reflect on, man, like at that time, I thought my match was so hard. I was so unconfident, but I performed this way. Or I might be thinking, man, for that tournament, I was just so happy to be there. And I was just thinking, oh, I chose to be there. I'm happy to be here. I'm grateful to be here. How can I replicate the conditions that allowed me to enter the competition with such a positive mindset? As a white belt, I actually journal and I have like a little diary of what I was thinking before and after my first tournament, but I actually have blocked out a lot of the earlier competition memories that I have. There's one time I competed at the Seattle Open. I literally have no idea who I faced or what happened in those matches, let alone what I was thinking. And so I really wish I was able to write that down. And now I have like a little notes pad of like mantras that have worked for me in different sorts of situations and the kind of positive self-talk that helped me and also the kind of negative self-talk that I felt like kind of brought me down. Finally, there's two things that I want to talk about that I like to do after my competition matches. And the first one is just to very simply assess where I'm sore. I remember writing down for my first white belt tournament that my pecs and armpits were really sore. And at that time I hadn't done a lot of lifting at all. And so I think it was just from pushing someone away for so long and so hard over the course of 6 matches. Over different tournaments, I have had different parts of me that were sore, like my hamstrings from playing a lot of close guard or my delts recently. I don't really know why, but it's just one way of checking in with your body and trying to figure out what muscles are you overusing, what positions are you not playing well enough that you have to compensate with using too much muscle. And also it's just an opportunity to reassess your overall physical fitness, right? If your hamstrings are sore every time, maybe it's time to do some endurance or power work with your hamstrings. I'm not a strength and conditioning expert by any means, but it's something that if I had a strength and conditioning coach, that's something I would bring back to them. Or because I'm programming my own workouts right now, it's something that I consider every time I come back from a tournament particularly sore. The last thing I like to do is, of course, review my matches. I think for most people, even if they win, it can be kind of painful to see yourself roll because we all roll a lot slower and probably look a lot less cool than we think we did. There's 4 questions that I like to ask myself both when I'm studying opponents and when I'm just reviewing my own footage. And the questions are the following. How did my opponent score on someone else or on myself? How did my opponent almost score? How did I score? And then how did I almost score? I got this template from a book called The Perler Way. I will link it. It's been a really helpful book for me in terms of developing competition mindset. And also Nick Perler works with a lot of kids, I think especially for high level wrestling. And so I can't speak to much of his philosophy because I'm not an expert in mental performance at all. But those 4 questions that I got from his workbook, I felt like really helped me systematically study matches. So when we're looking at when your opponent or you actually scored, then we know that those are your A games, right? So that's something that maybe you can rely on next time and just keep refining. When you look at times when an athlete almost scores, then we could say that is something that is a work in progress. Maybe that's your B game, or maybe that's just something that you're getting to close to a proficient level yet, but you aren't there yet. And so that's also one way that you can take what you learn from the competition match straight to the training room right away. I completely understand that competition is not for everybody, and if you enjoy just doing jiu-jitsu as a pure hobby and you just want to go work out, I think that's awesome, and that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. But I do think that if you want to commit yourself to competing, it's something that you should take pretty seriously, because someone is coming at you pretty hard, and we obviously want to be safe, but also you're investing a lot of your time and energy into this pursuit. And so you want to get the most out of it, not just because it's a good investment, but because you want to grow as much as possible as an athlete. And that's the beauty of a good challenge. So hopefully these tips will help some competitors out there. And if there's anything else you guys want to see me talk about, I would love to know. If just drop it in the comments.